And thanks for tuning in. And I'm thrilled that you would take the time to come listen to a few remarks, but also to take the time to ask questions and listen to the answers from this great team of leaders across the campus. Let me also express my appreciation to the members of the Executive Council and many others who have joined us as panelists for today, so that we have good information for each of you as we finish off the semester. Right, the semester's gone by very quickly, and I appreciate everything that everybody on the campus has done. We've faced continuing challenges with the pandemic. We've experienced great joy across the campus. We've comforted each other in times of sorrow, as well as our campus has been impacted by several cases of loss of life. And so I appreciate everything that all of the campus, each of you, are doing to make UND such a wonderful place for our students, for our faculty, and for our staff members. And this as I continue talking, start teeing up the questions. We didn't get any questions in advance this time, so we will begin with the Q&A right out of the gate. So as I talk, feel free to type. But I wanted just to share a brief set of ideas that I shared as I was traveling across the state of North Dakota this summer. And it was just sharing my 5 core principles or core values of educational leadership. And hopefully, as you reflect upon the decisions that we're making for the campus, these principles should hopefully resonate with you and perhaps give some insights into the direction that we're heading. The first is love your people. The second is we're here for our students. That's why we exist. The third is treat everybody on our campus with kindness, dignity, and respect. The fourth is to take every opportunity and to encourage others to take every opportunity to learn something new. And that sense of learning should promote, I think, a great sense of humility in all of us, knowing that other people are learning things and are developing expertise in other areas as well. And then the final, the fifth and final item is to understand that everybody is great at something. And I think it's the role of a university to unleash or to tap into that greatness among all of our folks. And so as we go forward, let's make sure that we keep these principles in mind about treating each other with that sense of kindness, dignity, and respect. And a lot of things happening as we go into the spring semester as well and wrap up the fall semester, preparations for our accreditation visit, which is still 2 years out, but the process begins early. The work that we're doing on revising the strategic plan, there's just a lot of great forward-thinking activities happening, and you, the faculty and staff, are the ones who drive this. And so I will, of course, involve you in the processes as we go forward. But with that, I see we've got our first question. We'll have each of our speakers actually introduce themselves as they answer a question for the first time. And with that, let me turn it over to our Vice President for Finance and Operations, Jed Shivers, who's going to MC today and control the flow of the discussion. Jed, over to you.
Thanks, President Armacost, and welcome to everybody. Thank you all for signing in, as the President said. We really do appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing from you. So, as we always do, I just wanted to sort of briefly recount where we are. We've been through a lot as a campus. I think we've done an awful lot together in working our way through the COVID pandemic. And I don't want to sound too much like a nervous Nelly, but I honestly don't think we're out of this thing yet. So I do want to start off by noting that Europe tends to lead America in terms of the course of the pandemic, and we are seeing cases spiking in Europe. So right now, so I think it's important for us to recognize that we're not done with this yet. And yet, just think back on where we are versus where we were. We have vaccines. There's promise of a new drug from Pfizer and other companies that have a really significant therapeutic effect. So we're in a way better place than we were before. And that's something that I think just gives us a tremendous amount of hope and looking forward to, as we all are, to the resolution of this. It'll become hopefully endemic as opposed to pandemic, I think the word is. So, with that, let's just jump right into some of the questions that we have. And the first one is, if there's a vaccine mandate required, will there be exemptions available? So here we're talking about anyone with a W-2 relationship with the university. And the answer is yes. Actually, if there is a mandate, and we're subject to it, then there are two pathways for exemption. One is a religious pathway, and the other one is a medical. So let me just turn very quickly to Peggy. Peggy, maybe you could summarize just quickly what those two pathways are and how they might work.
Yes, thanks, Jed. We will be offering, as we do in most cases, ADA type accommodations. So if this is a place that we have to get to regarding vaccine mandate, there will be a process that individuals may go through with regard to a medical exception or a religious exception. So when the employee or individual is noticed that they are required to vaccinate or show proof, there'll be a process laid out in that document that shows exactly how to do it. And it's just tap a link and fill out some fairly easy paperwork and send it back. And then the paperwork will be reviewed and discussed with that individual.
Thanks, Peggy. So I'm going to try, I keep track of all the questions and I try and group them thematically. So I want to stay on COVID related questions for a little while, and then I'm seeing a couple of questions that are not, and we really want to get to everybody's questions. So just staying with a COVID theme for a second. I've seen at many public events on campus and campus buildings, no masks used by those presenting. I have asked before and was told they are more than 6 feet from the others and that it's okay when presenting. Well, that is not an exemption listed on the mask mandate. My dean won't allow me to teach without a mask, even though I'm more than 6 feet from my students in the classroom. So I'm looking for Provost Link. Would you like to just comment on that briefly?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for that. Right now on campus, we do not distinguish in terms of social distancing within the classroom spaces. The current guidelines, we are asking everyone to be masked in those particular spaces. There are any number of reasons why that would potentially be a good position for us to be in, not the least of which is that under current guidelines from the state, regarding quarantining, if everyone in the classroom space is wearing a mask, even if there is a close contact, then we do not have to quarantine the whole class. So we have been asking everyone to please continue to wear your masks in the public spaces, and that includes while teaching in the classroom as well.
Thanks, Provost Link. Next question is, do you know who the vaccine mandate will affect? In the email we received, it indicated it might not affect anyone. So I'm going to ask Andy to join with me in answering this question. So I just want to start out by saying that if you've been following the news on this subject lately, this is an area of, I would call it, it's a very dynamic situation. Things are changing. So what do I mean by that? Well, on the one hand, for private employers with employees greater than 100, the federal government was using the OSHA mandate to create a vaccine, the OSHA mechanism to create a vaccine mandate. If you've been following the news, you'll see, I think it was the Fifth Circuit Court that enjoined that process. Whether or not it will continue and when it will continue is a TBD at this point. So that's really significant because that affects an enormous number of employers and employees. We haven't seen that on the federal side. So we are really not a private employer. So we're really affected by this as a function of being a federal contractor, and we function under the federal acquisition standards. And so what happens is when the federal government says, we want you to contract with us, and if you do this work, we'll provide you with the funding for it, they insert and have always inserted various clauses in those contracts that we have to comply with. So this is a mechanism that they're using to induce institutions of higher education who are involved in these contracts to follow the vaccine mandate. Now, one of the ways that they could have done this in a way that was, rather unambiguous is if they had said all grants, contracts, and cooperative agreements are included. So as you may know, if you're an institution of higher education, virtually every institution of higher education receives Pell Grants, which assists in their students being able to attend, and that would implicate all institutions of higher ed. Grants of all types were explicitly excluded. So that was one area of wondering, what's the intent behind this? So then we get into the world of our cooperative agreements and specific federal contracts as opposed to grants. And there, I think we are taking a rather selective view. So at this point, with that preface, let me turn it over to Andy for your comments, please.
Jed, great summary. And what will happen, as Jed points out, as we execute revisions, modifications, or new federal contracts, we'll have to assess how broad the impact, who's working on those contracts, who's kind of indirectly working on those contracts, and then notify people accordingly. Now, there's uncertainty here, as Jed points out, because the federal guidance changed a bit. We're still awaiting state guidance as the legislature meets in a special session right now. We're also waiting to see what happens with a court case. Our attorney general joined a lawsuit against the federal government to put a stop to the federal contractor vaccine mandate. My point is there's a lot of uncertainty at this point, but what our hope is to be as precise as possible and identify those who are directly involved or indirectly involved with those specific federal contracts, and then apply the vaccine mandate there. But it turns out, as Jed points out, that there's more flexibility in the time that it would take to implement a specific requirement for an employee. So, for example, the federal government calls on education and a deliberate process before the university would consider an action like termination. So it's an unfolding story. Our best guess is in about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, we'll have more specific guidance coming out to the campus. And at that point, we'll have a better sense of those contracts that might drive vaccine requirements for a subset of the campus. Thanks.
Thank you, President Armacost. So another COVID-related question. In the president's recent announcement about the upcoming vaccine mandate, there was no mention for any religious exemption. Does UND plan on offering such an exemption? And if so, what potentially what will that process be? Parentheses, how invasive? So I can comment on this quickly. I'm also looking for Peggy to come on. So basically, there are some federal agencies that basically are saying, hey, you know, we want you to show us, demonstrate a longitudinal aversion to being vaccinated as a function of your religious beliefs. That is not the pathway that we're taking here. We're not looking for that longitudinal history. So Peggy, do you want to comment on that quickly?
Sure, thank you. There are some base level questions about the religious belief, strongly held religious belief, and regarding exactly why the person wouldn't necessarily want to be vaccinated due to that belief. So some base level questions for the individual to answer, and then it goes to our equal employment office, who will review those exceptions. They'll also review the medical exceptions as well, which does require medical documentation from their primary care provider. So as Jed mentioned, this form does not go deeply into religious beliefs. That's, you know, those are difficult to really vet out, if you will. But, you know, the person does have to answer a few questions and show, you know, why this is a belief that they hold, or actually why the vaccination should be waived for them.
So thank you, Peggy. While you're there, and of course, that's, if we haven't introduced you, that's Associate Vice President for Human Resources, Peggy Varberg. While you're there, another question, and I think it's a logical follow-on to what we've just been talking about. So for those that get turned down on exemptions, is remote working allowed? In other words, it's a perfectly logical question. You know, okay, I can't get a religious exemption. I don't have a medical exemption. I just can, but if my supervisor says I can work remotely, does that exempt me from being covered under the mandate?
Currently, as we read it and as we've been advised by legal, it does not. So working remotely would not be an option under the federal mandate. The person would still have to work on campus or in whatever capacity they currently work.
Thank you. So I think one of the things, and I think this goes along with where the president and I were talking, at this point in time, you can interpret the rules, in our opinion, a couple of different ways. If you get one contract, then the entire campus is implicated by the mandate. That's not the perspective that we're taking. The perspective that we are taking is that as we sign these contracts, assuming that they continue to have this language and assuming it's not enjoined by, some legal process, those people that are working directly on those contracts or cooperative agreements will be, subject to the mandate. So that's really taking fairly narrow swaths of the campus community. Similarly, we have to look at those people that, because we must be in compliant with the federal rules, we have to look at those areas that are logically, that any reasonable observer would say, yeah, this office, these people are supporting this effort. So we're going to be working through that in the next few days to say, okay, from a logical perspective, if there's a contract that is signed somewhere on the campus, other than those people that are specifically working on it, which offices and which people are logically supporting that based upon just a reasonable observer's perspective. And once we determine that, then we'll notify people that they're subject to the mandate. But even then, interestingly enough, and I want to just to sort of give people a sense of where we are nationally with this. Originally we were like, okay, you have to be vaccinated on December 8th. And if not, maybe you couldn't work at your institution. That's not what's happening. So first of all, as you may know, the date was pushed back to January 4th, which I think is, the federal government showing a degree of pragmatism in terms of their implementation. And then secondly, there's no hard and fast rule about the speed with which an action needs to be taken for an employee who won't provide vaccination information. So instead of, okay, that's it, we're not there at all. Instead, we go through a process of education. We go through a process of communication. We do have to go through those processes. We must be in compliance, but there's a lot more time and a lot more latitude associated with these processes than we were previously faced with. So I think what you're seeing is some understanding of, from a pragmatic perspective, of what it will take to, implement these things. So let's see. I think people are asking about timelines, and I think this is a wonderful question coming up. What are the criteria for ending the mask mandate? Will it be when there is consistent, low, or moderate community transmission? President Armacost, would you like to take that one?
Yes, certainly. The dominant criterion is the transmissibility measure. There's a 4-level scale. When we get down to yellow, which is fewer than 50 cases per 100,000 citizens in Grand Forks County over a 7-day period. So again, 50 per 100,000 over a 7-day period. Currently, we're at least at the end of last week, we were at 290 cases per 100,000 over a 7-day period. So we have a ways to go, and it's been holding steady at that level. So that's going to be the primary threshold when we hit that yellow category of transmissibility.
Thank you. We have another question for Peggy Varberg on this topic. If you already work remotely 100%, in other words, you've never been on campus, are you still subject to the mandate?
Thanks, Jed. That is a complicated question and answer. The easy part is we don't know. So if you, as we read the document currently from the White House, if you are currently working on a federal contract or supporting the federal contract, the answer is you still must get vaccinated, even if you are 100% remote. The question we have, or the variability could live on how that mandate or how the federal contract is supported. If a person really touches a federal contract, which we're trying to carve out as President Armacost and Vice President Shivers have pointed out, trying to carve out where this actually goes. We know, as mentioned before, that working remote is not an answer to an exception where a person would have to be mandated if we go that way. But yes, there is a great possibility that even though someone is working at 100% remote, they may have to get vaccinated if it aligns again with the executive order.
Thank you, Peggy. So Here's a hypothetical question, at least that's how I view it. And generally speaking, I don't directly answer hypothetical questions because of their hypothetical nature. But the question is, if the vaccine mandate requirements become even more restrictive, removal of exemptions, requirement of boosters, et cetera, how will that change your stance on compliance? So let me answer the question this way. I think, honestly, what we're currently seeing in the federal government, as I talked about a few minutes ago, is sort of the opposite direction. A degree of pragmatism related to how they are dealing with the various guidelines, with the mandate rules, and I suspect it's a function of the interplay between the constituencies that are saying, hey, if this is the way this works, this is going to be the consequences, this is what will happen. So for whatever it's worth, and I mean, this is just me speculating, I don't get a sense that we're moving in a more restrictive direction. I think the federal government seems to be showing an admirable degree, in my opinion anyway, of flexibility and really listening to their various constituencies as they try to put this thing together. So that is how I'm going to respond to that particular question. I think that, here's another one. If you're vaccinated, but you not want to get a booster, is that considered fully vaccinated under the mandate? So like the other question, at this time, people who have gone through a full course of vaccination, so 1 shot with J&J, 2 shots with Pfizer or Moderna, are considered to be fully vaccinated. I would argue that by and large, unless there's medical reasons for it, the university clearly encourages people to A, become vaccinated, and B, if you're eligible for a booster and a booster works with you after consultation with your physician, great idea. But at this point, if you have either 1 shot of J&J or 2 shots of the other 2, you are considered to be fully vaccinated. So here's a question. What about an employee who currently refuses to come on campus due to COVID, but teaches online? That person has no special contract or any permit to do this. So let me address this question to Eric. So I think the question is, if we have faculty who are basically saying, hey, I'm teaching online, are they being treated in any sort of special way, or what kind of accommodations are we making there?
So I suspect when it comes to faculty that a lot of the arrangements for workload are being negotiated at the college and departmental level. We don't have a policy out of my office that says someone must be on campus, whether they teach remotely or not, X number of hours per week or anything like that. But we will say that faculty are expected, of course, to be available for activities that may take place on campus, holding office hours, meeting with departmental folks in meetings, and contributing to committees and other service activities and so forth. So I do hope that faculty across campus will make themselves available to participate fully in the life of campus in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me add one bit to this as well. If the idea is perhaps remote work will make me outside of the federal mandate for vaccinations, our current reading, if you're a faculty member who has no connection to a federal contract, our current reading and our current implementation strategy is to not require vaccination for that person. And as a consequence, if somebody says, I need to work remotely to not have to be asked about my vaccination status, that likely won't be necessary. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
So one comment, I hope for exclusions there is daily testing. I think this is with regard to the vaccine mandate as it relates to federal contractors, that is needed to protect the rest of us. It's actually interesting. So with the, my understanding is that with the OSHA-derived private employers with employees of over 100, there is a testing out clause, so to speak, right? In other words, you can either prove that you're vaccinated, or if you don't wish to do that, you don't go the medical route, you don't go the religious route, you can wear masks and test out. That is not available to federal contractors. It's an interesting thing. I certainly can't speak to why that is true, but that is not a requirement. So yeah, I actually think it would make great sense to have people, get tested frequently especially if they're unvaccinated, for their own protection as well as for others. But unfortunately, that's not part of the mandate. We certainly do encourage people to get tested. We have continued all of our testing efforts and are located at the Fritz Pollard Jr. Center as well as Wilkerson. Those things are going, and they have a pretty good volume associated with them. So, really encourage people to get tested. But under the mandate for us, that's not a requirement. Let's see. Here's a great question. When will we see, and I think this is probably as much for Provost Link as it is for President Armacost, when will we see everyone back on campus working versus working remotely, perhaps when COVID has decreased? Any thoughts on that?
Sure, I can offer a few thoughts on that. We are moving in that direction already. As folks know, when we started the fall semester, we had about 60%, give or take. I don't have the exact percentages in front of me at the moment, but of our teaching on campus was on campus. So we are already in a position where we are having events on campus, gatherings on campus. We're trying to do so in a safe and reasonable manner, and of course, abiding by our mask guidelines and so forth. But we are trying to reignite the dynamic nature of our campus as we speak. My hope is that will be a continued trajectory upward into the spring, into the summer, and to next fall, so that we can get back to whatever a post-pandemic, fully engaged and dynamic campus can look like for UND. I can't say exactly when we might set a particular benchmark or a particular date. We are still, as is clear from our conversation this afternoon, trying to work through all kinds of complications relative to the pandemic. But we do hope to get there as soon as possible. President Armacost?
Thanks, Provost Link. Hey, the one point I wanted to make is even before the pandemic, we had employees working remotely, right? There are some positions by the nature of the work that they were doing were 100% remote. And we had provisions in place within our policies to allow that to happen. And that type of work will continue, of course. The hybrid work that we've seen as a result of the pandemic, we've granted discretion to supervisors to make judgments. But a key value of mine, as I said in my opening remarks, is being together as a campus. And I think as supervisors determine hybrid work schedules and how to come back together as a campus, there is that balance of being together and some of the quality of life benefits that you get by offering a little bit of flexibility. So thanks.
Thank you. So again, sort of a commentary on the mild uncertainty over the vaccine mandate and its implementation. A question: with Governor Burgum suing the Biden administration over the mandated vaccine, will the mandatory requirement be on hold or delayed? So the Attorney General has joined in a lawsuit with other states about the part of the mandate that affects us, which is the federal contractor portion. The answer is we don't know. As we noted earlier, the Fifth Circuit has enjoined the part of the mandate related to private employers with greater than 100 employees. That's not true with the the federal contractors portion, and so we will proceed in the selective way that we've talked about until some other fact argues that we should proceed in a different direction. But so far, there's certainly activity, but no actual action has taken place that would suggest that this mandate will simply go away as a function of legal action. I think, let's just see, excuse me for 1 second. Oh, quick question, are they offering boosters on campus anywhere? Yes, Student Health Services does provide boosters to members of the campus community. And of course, if you're a student, that's the place where you should call. If, on the other hand, you're a member who lives out in the community, faculty or staff, I know for myself, I've been contacted by Thrifty White, which is just happens to be where I got my original set of vaccinations, and happy to say that I got my booster just last week. So they're definitely available. They're definitely out there. People are being contacted. And it seems to be people with a variety of age groups, so not just older folks like me. So I would stay tuned and look at the local area pharmacies. They absolutely have them, as well as contact student health. Interesting. Given that working remotely or flexibly, hybridly, has been shown to be beneficial to some underrepresented groups, and that many employees can do so efficiently, will this option still be available for positions which do not require an in-person presence, especially if we want to continue with our DE&I initiatives? What a good question. I think this is something that I'll just briefly comment on this, and then I think this is something to turn over to the president and to Tom McLean-Bailey, Dr. Tom McLean-Bailey. So, this is an issue, of course, that's going on across America about the benefits of some degree of, remote work. And, I think everyone is sort of working through how this is going to work. I think a lot of people are saying it'll never be the same again. This will be a permanent feature. I'm not so sure. Sometimes permanent features tend to have a certain half-life and they disappear. I think this has been something that has been very beneficial. In some cases, it's necessary for us to be able to recruit and retain people at the university. And of course, the interesting thing is how it then dovetails with our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So let me then turn to President Armacost as well as Dr. Tom McLean-Bailey.
Yeah, so I'll just give a quick remark and turn it over to Dr. Bailey. The same issue that I talked about before, the trade-off between building that important sense of community on campus is still there when we consider these hybrid work environments. And in particular, when we're talking about underrepresented groups, presence on campus, I think matters in those cases as well. So if it's about attracting underrepresented groups to join our workforce, and the only way to do that is through remote work, that perhaps is a question as well. But I'll be interested to hear Tom Bequee's thoughts on this matter as well.
Thank you, President. Excuse me, President Armacost. I think one of the things you were getting at, I think is really important for us as a campus, this idea of sense of belonging. And so I think, how do we continue to think about that in our physical space as well as our online or remote space? And I think we have to separate thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, in some way separate it out from, as we are having the response that leadership is taking in terms of dealing with COVID-19. I think that there are many efforts across the university where faculty have been hired who work remotely, faculty been on campus, students who are remotely, who are working in our online program, students who are on campus, and the same can be said for staff. I think that we make sure that in all of those environments, we're thinking about how we are engaging in an inclusive way, how are we thinking about the diversity of our students and our workforce. And I think, how do we make sure that we are thinking about this? What does it mean to be inclusive in these spaces? And so I think that this is something we're continuing to think about. We're continuing to try to get a better understanding of. And I think we'll continue to do that. But I think it's important in all these areas. I don't want to make it seem as if we're not addressing it, but I think it's a dynamic thing. I think that we have to continue the work that we're doing. And then we continue to assess and see what that looks like for us. But I do think a sense of belonging is important in those areas where somebody, whether they're remote or whether they're on campus or whether somebody's working in kind of a hybrid flex or going to school in a hybrid flex way. I think those things are really important. So President Armacost, I'm not sure if there's anything else you want to say.
Thank you.
Okay, quick question. Do you find people on campus are not getting COVID testing as much since the mask mandate is in place, feeling that wearing masks might not spread COVID if they have it? So I think, I'll give you a sense of what we talk about in our pandemic planning meeting, which meets every Tuesday and Thursday morning. By and large, what we see at the Fritz Pollard Jr. High Performance Center is people who are worried and are have symptoms, or they need to travel and they need to get a rapid result back. And there we actually do see a fairly high rate of positives, I would say in the high single digits, basically day after day as we move through this. And so that I think is a set of people that are self-selecting them for themselves for a specific purpose to get tested. On the other hand, we have people at Wilkerson who are getting tested, and those people, we have a very low positivity rate, although we're thrilled that we're doing it because we do occasionally pick up people who probably are asymptomatic. But I think if you think about it, if you are fully vaccinated, like me, for example, it's been many, many months since I've gotten tested. I don't have any sense of any symptoms. I'm now vaccinated and boosted. So, I think there's a bunch of people probably like me who have stopped getting tested. So I don't think testing is a particularly representative of the community at large, but rather it represents the two groups that I've talked about, those that are going to Wilkerson and those that are getting tested at the Fritz Pollard Junior Center. Okay. Quick comment, in Grand Forks, boosters are available to pretty much anyone, as we were talking about. Local places such as pharmacies and others are not asking for verification that you meet the current national criteria. Many have shared with me they've been able to get their booster, no questions asked. So thank you for that comment. I think it is quite accurate. Certainly was my own personal experience. So boosters are out there, and of course, we do encourage people who are interested to get them. Let's see, when an employee is noticed by email that they are mandated to have the vaccine, they will be, oh, sorry, this is an answer. So the question was, how do you go about getting the exemption form so they can fill it out? So I think the first step is whether or not you get notified, right? And as we've talked about, that's going to be a fairly selective process. It's going to be people who are directly working on, these federal grant contracts and cooperative agreements, or they're clearly supporting those areas. So once we sign our first contract with that language that's embedded, and of course, important to note, that actually hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure that it will. Then we'll be proactive. We'll be sending out emails to those folks and also emails to the people in offices that are clearly, supporting those efforts. So it'll really be us, notifying people directly, and then obviously at that point, our communication will provide them with the pathways that they can choose if they choose an exemption. All right. Next one, will there ever come a time when UND will advocate for that higher ed staff be treated differently than other state employees? So this is, okay, good. We're now going to get into a bit of, let's diversify away from COVID just for a minute. There are a few questions that are non-COVID related. So will there ever come a time when UND will advocate for higher ed staff to be treated differently than other state employees, meaning in other states, higher ed employees, specifically those who have a master's degree, start at 22 days of annual leave, and not the 1 day a month, and the max being something like 18 days after 20 years of work. So this is sort of an equity issue. Peggy, do you have any thoughts about that?
I know I've been thinking about this one for a minute as I saw it. Currently the process is based on years of service, and it's for staff, right? And it doesn't really take into play wholly the position that you might have. And this is based on what we know in Century Code. So it is applied across all state employees. So we don't, there are upsides and maybe some challenges to being a part of a whole state system like this, but some of the upsides are the fact that we do have benefits that are really great because of economy of size, right? Because there are 30-some thousand employees in the state of North Dakota, and that's one of the reasons why we're able to offer some of the benefits we do. Like, currently we don't require our employees to pay the premium on healthcare. We do have some benefits that are different than state employees. For instance, the tuition waiver. That's something that's only eligible for those that work in the North Dakota University system. And so by and large, most state employees are not eligible for that benefit. So So that's something worth pondering, and we'll keep an eye on that. But as for whether it's been a topic of conversation, not currently.
Thank you, Peggy. I am just looking, there we go, looking for just a few other questions that are not COVID related. Believe me, we'll get back to COVID. So here's another one. Many staff and faculty colleagues are reading Diversity's Promise for Higher Education, Making It Work. Will we be able to share ideas coming out of this book with our UND leadership once the book group is finished in December? And although the deadline has passed for giving input into the task force on the future of education, would this input be taken into consideration regarding UND's future strategic planning, particularly as it may help foster UND's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative? So I'm going to turn to President Armacost to kick this off.
Yeah, that's a great idea. The answer is yes. We'll make that opportunity happen, and we'll feed the great ideas coming out of that group into the strategic planning process, as well as our DEI efforts. And Professor Bailey might have some additional comments.
I'll echo the sentiment. Yes, you're welcome to, people have been doing it since I've been in this position, to email me, reach out to me, stop me as I'm walking across campus. I think the more ideas, different perspectives that we hear will only help us in this process. So if you don't have the book, we encourage you to get the book, to start reading through it, even if you're not part of a reading group. And I think it will really give some dynamic understanding of thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly at a larger kind of at a systems or organizational level, and thinking about what does that mean for us as a campus in terms of being leaders. So I think we definitely want that information. I encourage it. As I say this, I'm sure my email is probably going to start to fill up, but I think it would be helpful for us to hear all the perspectives that people have as it relates to this work on the campus.
Thank you. Quick sort of activities of daily living question not related to COVID. It was really nice and convenient when the post office and the credit union were located in Memorial Union. Is there a reason they are not in the new union? Answer is yes. There just wasn't enough space. So we had to basically, we had a certain budget, and in that space, to hit that budget, we had to prioritize what would be available and what would not be available. But Carla, I see you coming on. Are going to speak a little bit about a couple of these topics?
Sure.
So just let me introduce you first. Carla Mojan Stewart, our Associate Vice President for Finance.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to make sure that the campus is aware that the other reason that we moved the post office is they were available only for limited hours. And now we actually have the post office available 8 to 4:30, all the same hours that the campus is open, as well as we offer FedEx, UPS, any other kind of shipping at our printing and mailing service center, which is located on Campus Road. And we also have parking available there. So it made it a lot easier for people who could not find parking at the union. They now have parking available and can stop anytime between 8 and 4:30 to get all of their shipping needs. And stay posted, because we are looking to expand our printing services and the availability to our staff and students there as well. So just something exciting I wanted to share with the group about that change.
Thank you. So let me just go to another activities of daily living, but this one is really more about the situation that we all find ourselves in. This person writes, I often find it difficult to reach people via phone. If one is working remotely, are they required to forward their work phone to either home or cell during core hours? Peggy, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. If a person is working remotely, they always have the option, and I see Madhavi's on here, so maybe she can help me with this a little bit. They always have the option to do soft cell or soft phone, which is a phone where they can have their office phone directed to their computer. So it's as if it's coming through their office phone, and therefore they don't have to use their home phone or cell phone and be giving out personal numbers. This is something that a lot of staff have utilized across the last year and a half with pandemic. And it's fairly easy to do, but our folks in telecom have been really gracious. And I think Madhavi, if you could confirm, there may even be a knowledge article in your house somewhere that shows how to do this process.
Yes, thanks, Peggy. I'm Madhuri Marasingham, the Chief Information Officer at UND. So Peggy is correct. We do have a software client that can be installed in your computer so that when a call comes to your desk phone, it can get transferred to your computer directly. And we do have knowledge base articles under UIT knowledge base, but the other options that people are using is the Teams, because most people have used this for conference calls, things like that, but now they're actually using Teams to contact people directly via the Teams phone or even chat. So there are several options. If you are unfamiliar with these things, just call us, give us a call at 2222, and we will definitely help you out with getting the right solution for you.
Thank you. Now, another quick activities of daily living question. You know, and it's really good. I mean, it's important. You know, these I suspect we may be doing these town halls for a while. I think they're an effective way to communicate with our campus community. So I really do encourage people to ask questions that they're interested in. And here's a good one. Do we know when traffic lights will be installed at University Avenue and Columbia? So Brian Larson, I'm going to turn that to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jed. Brian Larson here, Director of Construction Management at UND. The City of Grand Forks tells us that the traffic signal poles, which is this specific item that is delayed, should arrive here in Grand Forks in late December, early January. And they do plan to have the contractors install the equipment regardless of the temperatures outside.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
That is a good promise. Another question, reaching out beyond COVID. What efforts are being done or plan to be done to recruit more international students at the undergraduate level? International student numbers may vary by colleges, but some colleges could use more targeted efforts to recruit international students. Provost Link, do you want to comment on that?
I'd be happy to. Thank you. What a great question. This is something that I have had a couple conversations now with Janelle Kilgore about, just trying to dig in a little bit to what our current efforts are in terms of international recruiting. Janelle is not on the panel this morning, so I cannot kick it over to her for some in the weeds details about what her shop is doing to attract international students. But I do want to say that this is a topic of considerable interest both to her and to me. And I do hope that we can begin to attract more international students to campus across all of our colleges in the coming years. So more to follow on that. Maybe at the next town hall, if Janelle's on the panel, she can give us some specifics about what her team is doing. Thank you, Jed.
Thank you. A quick logistical question, and I open it up to whoever can answer. Where can staff and faculty obtain a copy of the book that we just talked about, Diversity's Promise for Higher Education, Making It Work? Are copies still available? Can anyone help us with that?
Jed, I'll try to fill this. So the book read is through Tada. And so I want to encourage you all, and I'm sure Lynette and Ann will probably say something to me this, but I want to say reach out to Tada to be able to obtain a copy of the book. And I know that through Tada, people could obtain a hard copy or I think an electronic copy as well. I will just double check really quick, but I think that they still should have some additional copies of the text.
Thank you so much. So now next question is, of course, there's always, life never stops, even during pandemics, and we have things like accreditation. So one question notes, President Armacost briefly mentioned the HLC accreditation process. Will there be more information sent out regarding this / where can we find more information on it?
Over the next 2 years, there'll be a steady stream of info. And Eric, I believe there's a a story coming out in the next few days in UND Today.
That's true. There's, let me give a little bit of context if I can take just a moment here. The HLC accreditation effort has an executive committee that consists of Tim Burrows, Scott Carell, Deborah Worley, Ryan Zur. They held a kickoff meeting with the 6 criterion writing groups in late September. Since then, those groups have begun to organize their work, collect evidence, write their portion of the self-study document. This work in writing those sections of the self-study is going to continue through the spring semester, through next summer, and probably into early fall of 22. This will culminate ultimately in a handoff from those criterion groups to the HLC Executive Committee in November of 2022. At that point, the HLC Executive Committee will consolidate those efforts and produce a full institutional self-study. A final review draft will be presented to me and to President Armacost in February of 2023, with the final self-study due to HLC around June of 2023. There is, as President Armacost mentioned, a story coming out in out of marketing in maybe UND Today or something like that about this effort. And in addition, there is an HLC accreditation website. If you just go on to the UND main page and search for HLC, you'll find it easy enough. So more information is on that website as well.
Thank you, Provost Link. This is a good, actually, I like this question a lot. Will there be another town hall scheduled if and when more information is available about the vaccine mandate versus just an email being sent? Melanie, do you want to talk about that? Melanie Linder?
Sorry, I had to turn my camera back on. Another message about the vaccine. Yes, we're still waiting out the details about who will be impacted and how they'll be notified. So as we get more information, we'll be sending out an updated email to the entire campus. The plan is for those that will be impacted, there'll be a separate email in addition to the mass email that will go directly to those individual employees.
President Armacost.
Yeah, just the second half of the question focused on, will we do another town hall? And the answer is that makes a lot of sense, and we'll plan on doing exactly that. It'll be a pretty quick timing, right? Because if we're sending out an announcement, it means we have more information to share, and I think we'll want to talk about it immediately in the aftermath. So yes, we'll do that.
Thank you. Okay, so probably time to do a little tiny bit of housekeeping. We've got about 6 more minutes left to go. And I have to confess, I am looking, now you got to remember, I'm sort of scanning a whole bunch of emails, but I'm looking for a question. So does anyone have a question at this point that they would like to have asked? Here's one. Good question for the provost. If we receive emails from individuals inquiring about becoming an international student, to whom do we route those emails?
Almost anybody, and we will make sure it gets into the right hands. But more specifically, I think you could send it to Jen Amat, and she would be able to get it to the right people in admissions to help. Or perhaps Amy Sanger. You could send it to Janelle Kilgore. Any one of them should be able to assist.
Thank you, and thanks for everybody who is working with us to help us recruit students. How will employees report their vaccination status? We're going to come back full circle to the pandemic, and we actually have a system worked out. So remember, the first part of this is going to be the university actively notifying people who are affected. And then the second part of this will be, okay, I've been notified, now what do I do with it? So in that communication, there will be the instructions on how to proceed. But Peggy and Madhavi, would you like to just quickly describe this? We got about like maybe 2 more minutes or so.
Sure, I'll start and Madhavi can talk about the technological pieces. When an employee, when we discover that specific groups of employees fall now under the mandate, then we will send an email, as Melanie had discussed, targeting those specific individuals and announcing to them that they've fallen under the mandate, and we now are required to check on their vaccination to see if they have been vaccinated. Madhavi's group has come up with a process which is great, and it will be fairly simple. There's a login using the IDM, so their identifier, their system identifier, and questions. Are you vaccinated? Yes, no. If yes, then there's a place for you to tell us where you got vaccinated. Additionally, there is a question that asks, are you okay with us reaching out to the Department of Health and getting that information? So sharing name and for them to share that information with us. In those cases, then that's exactly what we do. We reach out to the Department of Health for North Dakota or Minnesota, and we can verify that the person has in fact received their vaccination. In areas where there are different states, then we reach out differently, but right now through Madhavi's group, this is an electronic connection that we can loop through. If the person says no, then the question is, are you asking for an exception? And there are the 2 links then for those exceptions. And if not, there's further conversations that will be had with the person if they're not and don't plan to be. But Madhavi, I'm sorry, I probably overstepped a little, but I'm sure there's more that you can add there about the links.
Yeah, thanks, Peggy. No, you covered pretty much everything. So the only thing that I would like to remind everybody is that if you were vaccinated in North Dakota or Minnesota, then you do not need to upload your vaccine card. But if you were vaccinated in another state, then we do ask you to upload it so the verification team can visit with the other state record holders to verify that. So if you do not need to upload your card, the entire process shouldn't take more than a minute. It's very easy because most of the information we do have, like your name. So there are certain pieces of information we do need to collect to verify. And you can use your phone as well. So we have made it as easy as possible to upload your information for us to verify on this end.
Thank you, Madhavi. So really fast question, since employees are required, will students be required to be vaccinated? So number one, at this point, not all employees are going to be required to be vaccinated. And we do have student employees, but they will only fall under the mandate if they're directly working on a contract or a cooperative agreement, or in rare cases are seen to be directly supporting those efforts. So by and large, we do not see the mandate reaching out to students at this time. President Armacost, would you like to close this out for us, please?
Yeah, before everybody signs off, let me just key on what you just said in your last phrase, and that is at this time. We're paying close attention to the evolving federal guidance, the evolving state guidance, and again, the court cases, and we'll keep you posted on things. What we've described today for the vaccinations is what we know now. And if that should change, we'll make sure the campus is well aware of any of those changes. I just wanted to make sure. I also wanted to take the chance to introduce several folks who I don't know if they've been part of this group yet. Beth Helwig, Dr. Helwig is our interim vice president for student affairs, who joins us through the end of this academic year. Welcome. How about a Zoom wave? Great. And then I think in addition, I see Chief Rodney Clark, our AVP for public safety and chief of police. I think this is your first Zoom with the whole group as well, perhaps. So hello to you. And then Dr. Tombakui Bailey, our assistant to the president for DEI. He has been part of the team for a long time, but he joins me in the front office, and welcome to him as well. And I think those are the 3 new faces that we have on the screen this time. Thanks to them, thanks to everybody who answered questions today, and thanks to everybody for attending. Enjoy the day.